Hi folks, my name is Millennial Smark and I'm back at it again with another video. And I told you guys this plenty of times, whenever you see me post a community post, super random, unless I notate it as random and it's just some random event that I'm talking about outside of professional wrestling, always be aware, take time to try to piece the puzzles together, to try to figure out what video is he going to come up with if I just put out a random community post out of nowhere like I did with the bar one. I'm looking at these matches from the bar and I'm looking at how they carry themselves. I'm thinking about Tony Khan and how he books big man wrestlers. I'm thinking about all the things I'm seeing in the political sphere. And here's the thing. It's not as if I haven't made plenty of videos about this in the past, talking about masculinity, talking about PC culture as a whole. But I feel like people don't take into context how destructive political correctness has become to professional wrestling overall. Notice how the lack of masculinity, the more progression towards the smaller wrestler, the more progression towards femininity, and embracing that within professional wrestling has been detrimental to the business overall. People don't want to sit back and admit it because they feel as if they talk about this, they're going to put themselves in a position to be ridiculed by the people that, are within their dogmatic ideology. Specifically talking about people on the left-hand side of the aisle. And I'm not here to make this video outright political. There will be some political anecdotes that I will have to discuss from my own personal experience watching professional wrestling as I started to go throughout my life as a professional wrestling fan. But other than that, there won't be too much talk about politics outside of the fact, of those notions overall. But do I really have to talk about this or notate this, or at least notate the obvious? Look at the people that are currently on top right now. Look at the people like CM Punk right now and AEW. Say what you will about CM Punk, about being a storyteller, this, being that, being this, being that. Look at him. Look at him. Really take a good look at CM Punk right now. Does that seem like someone who should be embodying professional wrestling? At least with someone like a Daniel Bryan, even though he doesn't really fit it from an aesthetic standpoint, he at least produces in the ring on a masculine level. He at least, at the very, very least, no one talks about this. This is a very underrated feature when it comes to a Daniel Bryan or a Bryan Danielson, is when you hear him talk on the microphone, he talks about masculinity. He actually goes in the ring and at the very least exhibits the masculinity that he talks about on the microphone. I want that to at least be the bare minimum. If you're not going to look like a man, carry yourself like a man. And I think Bryan Danielson does that, not CM Punk. He embraces the femininity of professional wrestling. He wants to feminize professional wrestling even further than what you see it currently right now at the moment. You see this dogmatic premise within the progressive sphere that has taken over pop culture as a whole, has leaked its way into professional wrestling to make it what you see right now. People having to put things on a pedestal that does not need to be put on a pedestal. Things like the women's revolution, for an example. Things that have been completely destructive to the professional wrestling business. Things that when they pop up on television, you don't want to see. You may pretend that you want to see it if that's how you actually, go towards as far as your political ideology is concerned. You may pretend as if you want to see it, but you don't want to see it. You don't want to see Becky Lynch main event WrestleMania. You want to see something that's more captivating, something that's a little bit more askew to the premise of what you're actually watching. You want to see men in professional wrestling being men. And this is not just a man argument as far as an image perspective is considered. It's also how, the storylines carry out itself, because, it could be very destructive overall to having to consistently compensate for you being a man by doing other things that in reality would take years off of your body, take years off of your career when you think about it. You have these wrestlers nowadays who feel the necessity to have to consistently put their bodies on the line to compensate for the storylines that they could be doing, but otherwise would be deemed offensive. People who can actually go out there and they can actually do promos and, get heat and do certain things like this now feel the need that, hey, The concept of being a heel is dead. It's now time to be the cool heel. It's now time to actually put yourselves out there and understand that we are an inclusive. It's so ridiculous. No, there is no inclusiveness within professional wrestling outside of the fact that people get together to watch professional wrestling. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, women, midget, doesn't matter. A fan is a fan at the end of the day, but what we see on our program, and we do not need inclusivity and we do not need diversity in that manner. Not everything has to be diverse in order to get something over. The notion of diversity should never be the conclusion to when to get something over. It should always be the entertainment. Look where we're at right now, folks. Look where we're at right now. Like, really think about this for a second. Look where we're at. Like, look at AEW for an example. I talked about CM Punk, but look at them right now. You have Britt Baker, who just went on social media not too long ago talking about, I wish the women can get a blood and guts match. But why? Why do you want a blood and guts match? Is it because you can actually have something favorable in regards to a match? You know, story-wise? No, because you guys have some of the... I've yet to see a good women's storyline in AEW. Why should you get a blood and guts match, Britt Baker? It goes right back to the whole match she had with Thunder Rosa a couple of years ago where people were praising it up the wazoo. But I'm looking at the match and I'm saying this is the same garbage match that the men are having. Why is this getting all the praise? Oh, it's because they're women. I don't play those games. You know, you even have certain podcasters, and I'll throw names out there, people like the Solid Monster, for an example, who actively, you know how he feels about the women overall, right? But then you get to the Royal Rumble event and he says it outright. No, I don't want to see multiple women matches on the card because it takes up too much time. So what would you rather get rid of, the men or the women Royal Rumbles match? And he said the women. Same thing with the Elimination Chamber matches. You know, you have these progressives. I'm not calling Silent Monster a progressive, but I'm saying you have these progressives who actively ask for certain things to be equity-wise given to us as professional wrestling fans that we never asked for at all, and then you get it, and then you don't sit back and watch it. You don't sit there. Perfect example, the women's evolution. How many people clamored for this, right? How many people clamored for the women's evolution? We need to have an all-women's pay-per-view. Guess what? One of the lowest viewed pay-per-views in wrestling history. You ask for things, you get these things, and you yourself don't even sit back to contribute to the thing that you actually asked for. All this talk about women being in professional wrestling, oh man, how many little girls look up to professional wrestlers and all this stuff. How many women watch professional wrestling? How many women did you bring in the last decade due to this women's evolution? How many women actually are coming to the product to watch it right now? Because last time I checked, when you go on social media, the closest thing you'll possibly get to a woman, as far as the internet crowd is considered, is some bozo with some goddamn Sasha Banks profile pic, gay as hell, pretending to be Sasha Banks. That's the closest you're going to get. The next closest will probably be some transgender fool like Nyla Rose. That's the closest you're going to get. And if you somehow, some way manage to get a woman inside the sphere, the most basic average bitch you possibly will ever see, that people act like she is the fucking bomb diggity, but in reality, she is one woman. It's like a woman. It's like the ugliest woman walking into prison. If you haven't seen pussy in a while, it doesn't matter how beautiful the woman is. A pussy is a pussy. You're going to go at that. She comes into the sphere and she creates so much fucking chaos. So much turmoil. And when I mean one per ratio, by the way, not just like literally one woman, but per ratio. We have to change this. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to do within a man's sphere. Telling you, man, it's not just the toxic masculinity as far as the image of professional wrestling that has completely downgraded to what we see right now from an actual physical perspective that's turning away everybody from professional wrestling as a stranger is considered. It's also the things that are being rectified, quote unquote, in professional wrestling in order to meet the consensus, to meet what Well, how would you say, guys, how would you say to meet how the PC fans would like it to be developed within professional wrestling that was never asked for it to begin with? These are the kind of things that I look at within professional wrestling, and I say to myself that, yeah, it's all political correctness, and it's killing the business. It's literally killing the wrestlers. It's making their careers less. Because, again, the things that you know that you have to do in order to engage with wrestling fans, in order to get them to want to watch your match, you got your tools taken out of your arsenal, arbitrarily speaking, and there's no one there to help you compensate for that. So all you get in the end of the day, the only thing you can do that has any sense of masculinity tied to it, because that's what professional wrestling is in this and its foundation is masculinity. The most you could possibly do is go out there and have hard-hitting matches. That's the closest thing, because femininity will never, let me say this one, because people don't, femininity within professional wrestling outside of the women being sexy will never sell in pro wrestling. It will never work. It will never get over. Just like men trying to sit there and put themselves on Maybelline, just like men fitting their crotch area and then trying to dress all feminine ain't gonna help sell products to women. That specific product for men. Dylan Mulvaney, Bud Light, Target. Have we learned nothing when it comes to leaving people and leaving products alone? Political correctness has destroyed everything within this country. And as the old saying goes, politics is a downstream to culture, and culture is a downstream to professional wrestling. And it seems as if people do not understand this. Your virtue signaling doesn't draw. Your virtue signaling has no effect on professional wrestling. Your virtue signaling only does more to destroy it than it does to build it up. You sit there and you give all these speeches, these political undertone speeches, these political rants in regards to what should be done here. You know what's funny? How people come at me all the time and like, why do you gotta make things so political, Millennial? Notice how everything that I'm talking about that they call political was just the norm barely 15 years ago. It was just the norm. It was the everyday life. It wasn't political. It was just living life. But I notice it and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And now that is called political. Asking what the hell is going on, having to notate, hey, this isn't like it was beforehand. Why are we going in this direction? Let me explain why I don't like this direction, what we're going into. That's considered political. Not the person with the agenda trying to institute change where it wasn't called for, whether you're talking about pop culture or professional wrestling, having to ask the question, why are we changing when no one is asking for change on behalf of a small group of people? That's political. Not the person trying to institute change. No. The person asking why we're changing. Why do we have to, talking about Tony Khan and AEW now, why do we have to have small midgets running around half naked in professional wrestling? It's already gay enough that we're having to explain to our friends and family why it's so cool to watch wrestlers in underwear half naked. It's already gay enough having to explain that. But at least in the past, you had the characters, you had the monikers, you have the people who were walking around. At least there was a cool factor. At least there was a masculine overreach. At least you could look at that almost to the degree as how you look at movie stars nowadays. At least there was an explanation, because when everybody's watching and everybody's doing the same thing, can't be considered gay at that point, unless you're going to call yourself gay. But you have people like Tony Khan furthering the emasculation of professional wrestling, consistently having to beat guys who don't need to be beaten, who are 6'5" and 6'7", losing to midgets, hiring big muscular bodybuilding dudes who have a history of losing to girls. But of course, that's the agenda that they want to put across. Change that no one has asked for. putting across change that was never alluded to in order to compensate for themselves. Because in the end of the day, and that's the conclusion to this entire video, the CM Punks of the world, the Tony Khans of the world, the women of the world, they have to look in the mirror and they have to see what they see. They have to lay in bed and think about their life and know that, man, I run a company now. I employ the big guys who looked down on me growing up. I want to get back at them. What's the best way to get back at them? Ideologically speaking, emasculate everything to make them disappear or to make them conform. That's the agenda, folks. The agenda is destroying masculinity or masculinity conforming to femininity. They don't like men anymore. They hate man. If you're a man, that means you actually worked. That means you actually tried. That means you actually put across something of an ethic, a work ethic, if you will. You're doing things that they don't want to do. And they don't like that. They don't like the fact that you worked for that body. They don't like the fact that it actually took you working for that body to talk to that woman, to give yourself confidence. Things that they don't want to implore, how I implore them. They don't want to do it. And it's a downstream to politics, and it's a downstream to culture, and it's made its way to professional wrestling. And the sad part is, they're winning. They're winning. Now, the ironic part is they're still losing. Because the more you win with this nonsense that's going on in professional wrestling, the more fans you lose. And the more fans you lose, they don't realize eventually you're right back at the same point. You just did a complete 360. You're right back at the same point as to where you were to begin with. Only difference is the audience is made up of people like you. And then you die, and then professional wrestling dies with it. Not to make this a political conclusion, but that's what progressivism is overall. They want to see the world burn, so when they die, it dies with it. And that's the ultimate revenge. Don't let them win. They're winning right now, but don't let them continue winning. As always, my name is Millennial Smark, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces, P.I.s.